Large spherical white objects are to be found everywhere in the skies over North America. Some grey cylindrical are also amongst them. How prescient was I in reading the book, The War of the Worlds? And you can get that on my Patreon page. Many thought that Sam Smith, fresh from the Brit Awards or wherever he was attending in an extraordinary balloon-like get-up, was one of those shot down by mistake. Although I saw Joe Biden looking up at the moon the other day and I worried for its safety. The Americans are blowing everything out of the sky. Now, it may be a Super Bowl hoax, they may be weather balloons, they may be pranksters, they may be drones, but I'm worried about that grey cylindrical one because according to CNN, it had no means of propulsion and the pilots that flew by it were unable to detect any means by which it could possibly be staying in the air. Now, this would be a strange time for extraterrestrial beings to buzz us, maybe even land amongst us. Although maybe they already have and are running things. And maybe that's why the world is going to hell in a handcart. But if they are of superior intellect to us, as one must assume that they are, to have the technology to come through all these light years and reach here, surely they'll take one look at this dysfunctional, disintegrating, once beautiful Earth of ours and hightail it out of here. Are extraterrestrials among us? Is there a UFO invasion? Or is it all a mere diversion? The ultimate, don't look up, but yes, look up, the ultimate look over there to take our minds off some of the actual man-made catastrophes that we are currently living through. Seymour Hersh, the world's greatest living journalist, in a deep dive on Substack, because nobody in what passes for the mass media today would publish his revelations, has proven beyond any reasonable doubt to anyone with two brain cells to rub together that the United States and Norway, who'd have thunk it, quisling Norway, behaving towards Germany in such a beastly way. Who would have thunk it? Seymour Hersh's, well, I was going to say groundbreaking, oceanically powerful piece on his Substack has proven beyond any kind of argument that Joe Biden ordered the blowing up of a piece of vital energy infrastructure owned by his friendly NATO ally, Germany. It was an attack on Germany's infrastructure with awesome implications, not for now, but forever. Germany, even if Russia had a change of government, even if President Putin was replaced by, I don't know, Nick Clegg as president of the Russian Federation, the pipeline is gone forever, on which billions of euros had already been spent, and pumping cheap, reliable, and entirely safe Russian gas to Germany and all points of Europe. No more, thanks to a decision by two of his own NATO allies to blow up Germany's pipeline. There are 5 top news platforms in Germany, and not a single one of them has reported a single word or even the existence of Seymour Hersh's remarkable, earth-shaking reverberations on his Substack piece on the Nord Stream 2. If that does not finally give the lie to the idea that Europe and North America are free countries with a free media, with a parliamentary democracy, with a democratic system, I really don't know what I'd have to say or demonstrate to you before you would conclude that it's all been a dream. The period, brief in historical terms, when we could so be described is now over. There is no universe in which no German media would report a story by the man that broke the My Lai massacre story, the man that broke the Abu Ghraib torture story, the Pulitzer Prize winner, the man with more journalistic awards in his cabinet than any other living, breathing journalist, writing about Germany, writing about the German pipeline, and not a word, not a single jot or tittle of what Hersh has written has appeared in the German media. Now that means one of two things. Either that Germany now has no dignity left at all, that there is not a single journalist or editor or publisher with a smattering of integrity who has decided that it would be to cheat his audience, to cheat his viewers, his readers, of the benefit of knowing the existence of this article, or the United States has forbidden Germany to do so. Such is the state of vassalage in which all of Europe, or most of it, is now held by the United States, I'm inclining towards the latter. And therefore, the only question is, when will the German people take a leaf out of the book of the 963,000 people in Paris this day demonstrating against the raising of the retirement age, yes, but also demonstrating for peace, against NATO, and for an end to France's involvement in the fanning of the flames of European war, which could become a nuclear war. When will Germany wake up? The revelations, of course, have been entirely ignored in Britain also. But then Britain is not so much a vassal of the United States as the tail of the American dog. And the tail is not placed in a part of the body that it's usually pleasant to be. To put it another way, Britain has become the rat that follows the elephant and feeds off its drops. We are the weakling running along behind the school bully, hoping that we can pick up some of the coins that fall from the pockets of those that the bully assails. It is a truly dreadful state of affairs. On the social media scene, things are increasingly not much better. I don't want to dwell on my own battles with Twitter, but it has now become actually a thing of the absurd. Videos that I put out on YouTube, which get scores, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube, get hundreds of views on Twitter. I have almost 450,000 followers on Twitter, but almost none of them ever see any of the things that I say or put out on Twitter. And if that's the state of affairs as revealed in the congressional hearings on Twitter this week, where the former executives of Twitter will literally, well, not literally, although they might yet literally, be nailed to the wall by congressional criticism and analysis of the role that they played in breaking the American Constitution itself, in forming a conspiracy, a concert party to deny truthful information to the great American public. If that does not lead to jail terms for the people involved, including the officers of the FBI and the CIA who were entirely implicated in it, I really don't know what you'd have to do to get sent to jail in the United States. I don't know, probably be black or something. The big tech has formed an ironclad alliance with big government and the securocratic apparatus around big government. And all of them now constitute a clear and present danger to anything that remains of democracy in our continent and in the subcontinent of North America. And that's important because, as we all know, for most people, that's the world. Although only 13% of the people of the world live in what is laughingly called the West, because it includes people like Japan, where the old are about to be told to ritually disembowel to solve the aging population problem. It includes places like Australia and New Zealand, which geographically cannot conceivably be placed in the West, but they still believe that they are. That 13% has ruled the world for centuries. And it's the fact that that is coming to a shuddering end, as powerful as even the earthquake that has now killed more than 30,000 people in Turkey and Syria. That earthquake, political, geopolitical earthquake, which is currently underway, which is the cause of the tremendous turbulence in the world. Because nobody in Africa, nobody in Latin America, nobody in Asia, not China, not Russia, not India, not Brazil, not Iran, nobody, in fact, in the entire Arab world is now following American orders. In fact, they are outright defying them. Russia cut its oil output by 500,000 barrels a day this week. The West begged OPEC to increase production in order to mitigate the necessary price rise that will cause. And OPEC, within 60 minutes of that appeal, told them to go and get stuff, that there will be no increase in output by any OPEC country. The fact that countries as disparate as India, as Saudi Arabia, as Argentina, as Qatar, are now queuing to join the BRICS. The fact that half the countries in the world, half the population of the world, is now in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and more than half of the wealth of the world is now in the SCO, are all indicators of this tectonic shift that has occurred in world politics, rapidly, massively advanced by the conflict in the Ukraine. I said from the beginning, you may be tired hearing it, but let me say it one more time. In our response to what happened almost exactly a year ago in Ukraine, in the policy we followed from mounting a coup to overthrow the elected government in Kiev in 2014. In our attempt, as long ago as 2008, to turn Ukraine into an armed camp against Russia, we lifted a huge stone only to drop it on our own feet. We have accelerated, perhaps by a decade or 2 decades, this gigantic shift that's going on in the world. Let me turn, if I can, to the earthquake. Of course, and we must assume that it is a natural earthquake that struck 3 of America's enemies in quick succession, Iran, Turkey, and Syria. The devastation is almost impossible to believe. More than 30,000 people have lost their lives. More than 1 million have been wounded and maimed. And millions are now homeless in the cold winter, for it is a cold winter in the north of Syria and in the south of Turkey. Some countries have distinguished themselves by their response to that earthquake. Others merely compounded their own disgrace. The British people, I must say, I cannot speak for any other. I'm very proud of them. Almost £50 million from the public, from the people of the United Kingdom was raised for the earthquake victims in 36 hours. This is a truly phenomenal, generous response in a country itself sunk in the economic doldrums and shivering through an energy-poor winter. Other countries, like Italy, have broken the sanctions on Syria to fly military planes with aid for the people of Syria. But the big finance companies who have been turning back donations sent to the Red Crescent in Syria on the grounds that Syria is under American sanctions should hang their head in shame. Those companies that are saying they cannot supply medicine and medical equipment to Syria because Syria is under economic sanctions when people are still lying, some of them alive, lying now for a week amongst the rubble, under the rubble. In the great city of Aleppo, for example, a woman and her daughter were rescued alive today. 5-6 days of lying under the rubble. Countries like Cuba, like Iran, like Russia, have rushed aid into Syria. But most of the countries, the governments of the West, have completely refused to lift these sanctions on the people of Syria. I made a video about it last week. You may have seen it. If not, you should look it up. Syria's only crime was to stand up to a Western-financed and inspired ISIS and Al-Qaeda attempt to remove the secular from the term secular Arab Republic. Its only crime was with its allies, Russia and Iran, to defeat ISIS and Al-Qaeda and their alphabet soup of local affiliates in the civil war which has now raged well over a decade in Syria. We launched our own blizzard of cruise missiles and other attacks on Syria when the jihadists failed to reach and conquer Damascus. Well, not us in Britain, because the British Parliament, in which I sat at the time, in a debate in which I spoke at the time, defeated David Cameron's government in its attempt to join the bombing of Syria, despite the fact that both front benches, Conservative and Labour, were gung-ho for the bombing. The British Parliament said no, and the engines of the jets had to be stilled and the bombs unloaded. No such thing could possibly happen today. Not even a decade later. The British Parliament is entirely unanimous. I don't use that as a figure of speech. I'm using it literally. Not a single member of the British Parliament can dare, or will dare, I should properly say, raise their voice against this madcap dash for what very well might become World War III. We've got guests tonight who can explain that just as powerfully, if not more so, than I have just tried to do. So stay tuned for Colonel Senator Richard Black, Gonzalo Lira, and Richard Medhurst in the course of the next 1.5 hours or more, because this is the mother of all talk shows.